do.
Welcome back to Reaction.
Reaction. Well, today is different.
Yes, completely different.
We are going to share a story that we have looked into, right?
A story I'm sure many have heard.
Right. And right, if you have not seen the movie Paid in Full, we would suggest you guys to watch the movie first. It will help give context of a lot of things that we are going to discuss about. We're going to take it nice and slow in detail, but we do want to make sense of this whole story.
Yes.
So disclaimer, right? And
subscribe.
Both. So disclaimer is that the point of this is
to mostly elaborate the story, because the movie, the way it's portrayed, is a bit twisted up.
Right.
It's based on a true story.
So a lot of people don't even know that
story.
part.
Yeah, a completely true story.
Right. But the names have been changed, and it represents the history of the city, of the people of the city, and what the city went through, and from your economy to your gangs and your neighborhoods, and drugs trafficking to police departments involved, on the good side and the bad side. You have corrupt cops involved in this story. You have murders and millions and possibly billions of dollars involved in this story.
It's mostly the struggles of growing up in that era,
in that time period.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to focus on, that time period, right? Because rewind. Stop. So we're talking about 1980 to
80s
to 1990.
90s, yes. Well, it's more starting a little bit before the 80s. Their story is starting
in the 80s, right? Early 80s.
Yeah.
So we're going to start off with let's start off with the main characters and the names
of the movie,
of the people, the original people and the movie. And right. So we're speaking of Azie Faison here, Alpo, that many people have heard, and we are speaking of Alpo Martinez, and we're speaking of Rich Porter. Rest in peace.
Well, the story is mostly going to be on Rich Porter,
right? The movie. Yeah. The movie is based a lot.
It's based a lot on the story of Rich Porter.
Because Rich did get
the one that
most attention. Right.
Yeah, he got the most attention.
He was the hero, what you would call, of this neighborhood, of the town, of the time period. Yeah. Who does lose his life in the tragic loss. Let's cut to that. But so his death took place January 3rd, 1990. Okay. Now there's another couple of names involved in this story as well. The name William Porter comes up. And explain that.
Which would be the brother of Rich Porter, the little brother of
Rich Porter, who was 13.
Yeah, he was 12, 13
years old when he was
murdered, kidnapped.
First, for ransom.
Held for ransom.
$500,000.
Asked from his brother,
Rich Porter.
Yes.
And he was held for ransom for about a month. Right? During that time period, his finger was chopped off by the people who
were holding him for ransom.
Which we're gonna get to as well.
Yeah.
Who are holding him ransom, and they chopped the finger off, and videotape.
And the tape recorder
recorded him crying
and screaming for his life.
Yes. Screaming for his life, and that was sent to Richard Porter.
Yes.
Okay. Now, that was William Porter, right?
Yeah, which in that scene in the movie, that's where he actually comes in the car crying. That infamous crying scene of Paid in Full. He's crying about his...
Right. So, Now the three characters in this movie are Woody Harris.
Wood Harris.
Wood Harris, who's playing Azie Faison. Alpo Martinez, played by Cameron. And Rich Porter.
Alpo or Rico.
Right, Rico, which was his name in Paid in Full. And Rich Porter, played by Mekhi Phifer.
That was Mekhi Phifer, yes, correct.
Right. So the scene that you're talking about, the infamous scene with Mekhi Phifer crying
in the car. Yes.
After his brother was kidnapped and he said, he says in the movie that
he gave him his finger, bro.
Right. So long story short, the movie Paid in Full is based on the story of these three characters.
Azie Faison, Ace Boogie, Alpo Martinez, which is Rico.
Right. Cameron.
And Cameron.
Dope character.
Yes.
Amazingly played by Cameron.
All of them were great played by their characters, by each of their actors. Great, beautiful play. But
there's more to the story.
The problem is that it's too much twisted.
The movie part is very twisted, and that's been confirmed by the people.
Who actually, the actors, the real
writers.
Yes, the real life
producers, who put the story together. They even don't feel comfortable about this. So there is an interview of Azie Faison who does not agree with some things in the movie. We did watch that. However, he does agree that the story is truthful.
It's semi-truthful, and it was great put together
to sell.
But his point of
what happened. So Azie Faison's, from what we saw, his point was that he doesn't want to glorify what happened.
He doesn't want to glorify that lifestyle
of money, drugs cars, and being,
it isn't what it's played out to be. He just wanted to stop that cycle.
Right.
Make a change.
Like it happened.
Show a message that look at it, and this isn't the way.
This isn't the way. Because
there's no
murder and
positive outcome. There's
people getting killed here.
Outcome.
So after you lose people very close to you, you gotta turn away. So his perspective was that I want to create a movie, tell the story, however, do not touch, right? But the roles were played so beautifully that it becomes pretty glorious
and copied and
want to be the Flash. The Flash in the movie. That's what creates the movie. Makes a lot of young people want to be like it, which connects to Azie Faison saying that when this whole thing started, Scarface is what introduced
him
into that lifestyle. So Scarface introduced a lot of people
into that lifestyle.
This drug is about to come in because
drug kingpins
being these mobsters and
have
a lot of money and power,
and having money and power, and
so it's glorified in the movie
of the people,
to sell. But in reality, it does a lot of damage to the youth, and it corrupts people's mind because it makes them think, oh, why shouldn't I do that?
Why shouldn't I do it? Or they're not getting the right message for it, or from it, or
like you sold it perfectly, But then again, and when a company jumps in, they have to make money off of it,
make their profit, what sells, what people watch.
So this movie was created by Rockefeller, Miramax, and written and directed, written and helped and put together by Azie Faison. But the story does get manipulated when it was created as a movie. More than just names. It was kind of just twisted around. But after reading a lot of articles and a lot of interviews that we watched, because we just got
sucked into the real story of
what happened. Because it's the city, you got to know, at least from a knowledgeable Harlem. We're talking about Harlem Bronx, and then eventually more people from other boroughs do
this mess. Into other stories,
I don't know what we got.
Even into another movie.
Right.
But we're not getting
this
into
movie
that.
Actually connects to another movie.
Yes.
that a lot of people haven't made that connection, because in real life those people are actually connected.
And those members,
that time period where everybody lived, and now these stories are starting to come out.
Yeah.
So when you hear these stories, you can connect who's who, and it freaks you out.
Baffled. You're just like,
right? There was,
and then explains shit, and you're like, oh, and
yeah, we went through a couple of shocking moments where we came across a few stories recently, but this story connects to another story which we're also gonna get through. By the way, guys, this is gonna be a few-part series, and we do want to dig into it. Join the conversation.
Yes,
talk to us. We're willing to like
let us know some stuff if you know about it, or
right. And just for knowledgeable base, because it's your history, and not only that, it gives you an idea of what we went through to get here, but it gives you an idea to what to avoid later on in future, because it's the same concepts that get used over and over, you know, drugs, money, and
it connects to so many things
in regular life.
You just see things.
And it opens your eyes.
That's what I'm saying. It gives you different perspectives. You start putting even other things together that make sense to the way shit is going on.
Right. And you'll see that it was the same system that gets used again in a different manner.
Literally.
Right?
Literally.
Back then, drugs were sold to you different than what they're sold today,
cops,
right?
And all that, because there's cop stories. There's their whole stories, how they're bought, and then
right. So there is police corruption in this story as well, that links to somebody else. That's a whole different crew. But these stories are pretty linked because they were in the same time period.
Yeah.
But back
really
to
interesting. It's really
a couple of things. So this happened right before the crack era. We're speaking of the 1980s to 1990s, which was more of the cocaine era. Yeah. And right before the cocaine was the 60s and 70s.
You had the heroin era.
The heroin pandemic, where heroin was just tore through neighborhoods, right? Probably, in my opinion, the most destructive that we've seen in the city, and still do sometimes bad. In this story, you're gonna hear names from Frank Lucas and Nicky Barnes and Bumpy Johnsons to
those are the before
Calvin Clark and Ronald Timmons.
Those are more like the before them.
Right. So the heroin pandemic was Frank Lucas and Nicky Barnes and Bumpy in there. That was the 70s, early 80s, and then cocaine comes in and gets introduced and gets flooded in the cities.
Because Frank Lucas.
Frank Lucas brought in a lot, and then even from other countries got involved and brought in a lot. Escobar was here. Escobar lives that time period, so you see how these people are so connected. That's crazy. So we're not gonna jump in the Escobar story at all. That's too big, way too big. But you have to understand that at this whole time period that we're gonna speak of, Escobar is supplying. All right. So Escobar is sending hundreds and billions of dollars of mainly cocaine into this country, which gets flooded onto the streets.
In the movie, they also say where the Hispanics came in, they're talking about Escobar.
Right. So in Paid in Full, there is another crew of the Hispanics, and there's a Italian crew as well, and so there's different crews all over the city, depending on neighborhoods. So every neighborhood, because everything is so segregated. So that's another story. Now, three names that I mentioned were Calvin. Calvin was his name in Paid in Full. His real name is Kevin Clark.
Yes.
Ronald Timmons, number 2. And the third person known as Apple. Uncle Apple. Now, what do these people have to do? Now, these people are the first offense that happens because Azie got shot first when Azie got robbed in his house.
Those names were this.
Right. However, in the movie, it shows that
the order of the kidnapping or the shooting.
Because Azie said that something is off in that part.
It's off in that part.
Right.
But first, the brother was kidnapped first on his way to school in the morning.
Right.
Yeah. Which was set up by
Apple.
By Apple. Yeah. By Uncle Apple and his crew, whatever.
And Azie gets shot by another person.
When they had their own.
Azie gets shot by another person.
By 3 people, yeah.
By 3
people.
He got
robbed. He got shot 9 times. Which those were
Henry Holden, Kevin Clark, and Ronald Timmons.
Ronald Timmons.
So after this is, by the way, guys, this is all public record.
Yeah.
This is today all public record. You can all do your research and find out. So these were the 3 people that were originally convicted for shooting.
112 years.
Right. They went to go rob Azie Faison at his house. Yeah. Azie Faison ended up being the head of the crew, the main supplier.
He was more the character,
in the movie too.
Yeah.
He was the guy who
brought the connections. He was like the middleman. He was the one making the connections with everyone.
With an Italian crew.
Yeah.
So above them was the Italian crew at that time supplying. But Azie Faison does get robbed in his house, gets shot in the head, total of 9 times, including once in the head, in the neck, the shoulders. He
had 3 family members.
3 family members killed in the house. Him and one other person survives.
Yeah.
Once again, this is something that was in the newspaper. It is in the front titles. Even today, you can find Google it, and you can see the front page cover of the story.
And you'll see all of Azie Faison's interviews.
She's
as alive well. Today as well.
Right. God bless. She's alive today. Right.
Yeah.
To tell this story.
To tell the story and trying to correct it the right way. The right way. Same as we're doing, trying to.
Right. We are not here to boast and shit, but it's interesting because it helps you understand of this era that went through and how bad it was, and thank God we're not living through that today.
The truth. We all want to know the truth, not what a movie is portrayed as, the actual story.
Guys, this happened. Can you guys imagine this happened? Once again, if you have not seen Paid in Full, we would suggest to go watch that movie. It will help give a lot of context to what we're speaking because it's based on a true story. Once again, back to 3 names: Henry Holden, Kevin Clark, and Ronald Timmons are 3 people that were eventually convicted and charged for the shooting of Azie Faison.
Attempted murder. That's 9 shots.
Right. Oh yeah, they left him for dead.
They
left him. Not only that, but they killed 3 other people
in his house.
For sure.
Tied them up.
Killed them for sure. And he survived. So it's not that they didn't kill him. He survived.
He survived it.
After being shot in the head. Man, that's crazy. The man still has like
a scar
right across his head. So once again, God bless you if you're watching this, Azie. So this story gets a lot more deeper. So the 3 people, out of those 3 people, one is Azie Faison's sister's boyfriend.
One of the shooters.
One of the shooters.
That would be Kevin Clark.
Which would be Kevin Clark?
Yeah, that was the boyfriend.
Correct. Right. That was That was Kevin Clark. So Kevin Clark was the boyfriend of Azie Faison's sister, who had got arrested, came out. When he came out, Azie Faison was the biggest thing. He held the control of the neighborhood, which was Harlem. We're talking about Amsterdam, St. Nicholas, all that 145. Once again, this is all documented, right?
Yes, all public knowledge.
Public records for sure. He comes out, he's jealous of Azie Faison. He robs him, leaves him for dead.
He leaves him for dead because he recognized his voice.
Because Azie recognized
his voice. He said,
this man.
Kevin, why are you doing this? And
so in the movie, this is shown that he says, Kevin, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Calvin. His name is Calvin.
His name is Calvin in the movie. But in the interview, he said that he looked up and said, "Kevin, why are you doing this?" And in the interview.
Right.
Because his real name is Kevin. In the movie, it's Calvin.
Right. Just like Rico's real name is Alpo, but in the movie it's Rico. And Rich is Rich. We are going to get to Rich's
real name is Albert Martinez.
Alberto
Martinez.
Alberto Martinez, yeah. But he was known as Alpo. Now, that shooting happens. Azie survives, recovers, comes back, and he doesn't want to play the game anymore. He goes into a different style, which is mob style, which is a music crew. So he goes into the music industry, music direction, and he creates a group called Mob Style with a couple of crew members.
A couple of crew members trying to portray the message of stopping that lifestyle. Through music. Through music, yes.
Right, rather than being on the streets now. However, during this time period, Alpo and Rich Porter, the other two people, become best friends and continue and hit new levels.
Yes.
Bigger, higher numbers. People, we're talking millions and millions of dollars of deals at a time that were done between people who range from 15 to 21 years old. Take a moment for that. They were living in the 80s, ranging from some of them started at 12, 13 selling drugs, and ranging from 15 to 20, 21 years old, and they are selling millions and millions of dollars of cocaine.
Alpo was 15 when he was known by all of Harlem, as the face of Harlem.
Right. Before Rich Porter. Until Rich became the face of Harlem. We are going to dive into each one of these people's story a bit more. So, clearing with Azie Faison's story, he goes into mob style. He starts pursuing something else. However, Alpo and Rich Porter continue going with their the sale and making millions of dollars through cocaine. As well, now, this is a little bit late 80s, so because Azie Faison got shot in 87. Azie Faison got shot August 28, 87, right? So now you're talking the late 80s where crack is introduced. Which is another form of cocaine, right? Cheaper form. And it changes the game. And it brings everybody against each other very much. During this time period, Rich Porter and Alpo are working together. However, a confrontation happens between them. And we're gonna end the video right here. Because it's getting too long.
Catch the rest of that in the next one.
Yeah, there's a couple other people named that's gonna come along. We are going to try to connect the whole history
of this movie in Paid in Full, because remember, these stories tie into other
another movie.
These characters.
You gotta wait to see what that other movie is, and if we're wrong,
we're wrong, correct us.
We're gonna be wrong. Damn, you guys gonna tear us up. But we do want to get the discussion started because it helps you understand the history of what was going on in the city. Like,
and we might get into that other movie. We might.
Right. We might.
You gotta subscribe to find
out. Listen to her. You guys gotta listen to her. I don't talk anymore. I hate talking. I talk too much anyway. But once again, this is not to glorify this.
No.
Not to make it look good.
No.
We would suggest watching the movie just to develop context of history. However, do your research
about the actual story.
And join us on the next video as we continue.
We'll give you the reaction.